Since Able is not yet full-blown accounting software, we have an integration with a massive accounting platform, QuickBooks. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, I will say in this video here, I'm going to keep this fairly broad because there's a lot of different circumstances when it comes to connecting to QuickBooks, where you're at in Able, where you're at in QuickBooks, what you've built out in both of them, how long you've been using both of them. So rather than try to dive through every single scenario that there possibly could be, I'm going to link in the description field below the link to set up a Q&A video call with one of us, so then we can actually work through your specific scenario. Another very important thing to note here is this is just a one-way sync. So once you have this connection established, then it will just run Able to QuickBooks. So anything you do in Able, any job you create, any customer you create, any product or service you create, any payment you take, will transfer over to QuickBooks, assuming you have it set up that way. It will not run QuickBooks back to Able. So if you're looking to create anything new over in QuickBooks, just be aware that's purely creating it over in QuickBooks. That will not generate that same data over in Able. And that could potentially lead to duplicates. So definitely be very careful with that and try to add any new information into Able. For today, I'm going to just outline the ideal candidate for connecting to QuickBooks, and then we're going to go through just a simple connection process and sort of all the steps that are involved in that. So when it comes to the ideal candidate for connecting to QuickBooks, first of all, we are connected to QuickBooks Online. So right out of the gate, if you're using QuickBooks Desktop, then you would not be a candidate to be able to connect because we cannot connect to QuickBooks Desktop. Now, if you are using QuickBooks Online, but maybe you're just using it more so to track general revenue and expenses, then I would say you are also not an ideal candidate to connect. This connection would be a little bit overkill for what you need, because what this connection does is every time you create a job in Able, it generates that invoice over in QuickBooks. So if you are a person that has been using QuickBooks Online to generate every single one of your invoices, and you need to continue to do that, maybe because you have an accountant in place that needs you to keep doing that for their reconciliation process, or maybe that's just how you've been keeping track of things, then you would be an ideal candidate to connect to QuickBooks because this will streamline that process. Rather than having to build out the invoice in Able and then build it out again over in QuickBooks, we want to remove that redundancy and just have you create it once in Able, and then Able does the necessary communicating with your QuickBooks account. So if that is the case for you, then let's go ahead and walk through just the basic connection process here. Okay, so I'm actually already authenticated on this browser. Otherwise, it would take you to a login screen first. So once you log in, then you'll be brought into this screen here. If you have multiple businesses, they'll be selected in this little drop-down list here, but you're just gonna go ahead and select the one company that you want to connect to. In this case, I'm going to connect to this Sandbox company because this is just our development account here. Now it's going to take us into this fun little loading guide, and it's going to ask us a series of questions to help get the initial steps set up for this integration. The first step is setting up your tax rate. So this is just going to be the default tax rate. Keep in mind, it is going to be pulling from the tax rate that is within the jobs that are created in Able. But if for some reason it cannot find a tax rate, this is going to be what it will apply in that situation. So I'm going to go ahead and select a tax rate here. Now it's going to ask if I want to sync payments made in Able to QuickBooks Online, meaning anytime I take a payment in Able, do I want that payment to also appear over in QuickBooks so I don't have to manually record that payment over in QuickBooks as well? So if you are connected to Stripe or Square and you plan on taking your payments in Able, I would probably recommend saying yes here. If you plan on taking payments over in QuickBooks, I would definitely recommend saying no here, otherwise you'll duplicate all of your payments. But either way, it's completely up to you and how you want to manage things, and this can also be changed very easily after the integration has been established. This next one is important. So this is asking if you want to import your customers and products and services that you already have over in QuickBooks into Able. If you are coming from using QuickBooks full-time and you have all your customers and all of your products and services over there and they're all up to date and you feel confident in those, and if you have a completely empty Your Able account. You are the perfect candidate to select both of these to import them. That means that it's going to completely populate your Able account with all of your QuickBooks data, and all of that stuff will already have QuickBooks IDs on their back end, which will make that integration run that much smoother. For today's purposes, because my Able account is completely populated, I'm going to turn these off. I'm not going to import either of them, so I'm just going to say none here. All right, so now I am connected to QuickBooks. So I want to talk about a couple of the preferences that will appear in here. So let's just go in order as they appear. So you can see this first one, use the number IDs generated in Your Able as invoice numbers over in QuickBooks Online. So if you want to make it really easy to be able to match up the jobs that you have in Your Able with the invoices that are being generated in QuickBooks, I would recommend turning this on. Now, the one thing that you're going to want to do if you do turn this on is first go over to QuickBooks and figure out what your next available invoice number will be, which means go look at your list of invoices, see what the most recent number is, and add 1 to that. You're then going to take that number and come back into Your Able. You're going to go into Preferences in the side menu. You're going to go up to this Job tab up here, and you are going to change this number ID to whatever that number is that you just got from QuickBooks. So that next available number. Now this is going to make sure that as it counts up chronologically from there, because that's how both systems operate, it's not going to repeat any of your invoice numbers over in QuickBooks. The next preference down, you can see sync payments made and You're Able to QuickBooks Online. This is one of those questions that we were just talking about, and this is what I meant by it being very easy to be able to turn this on or off, depending on what you want to do with that. The next one down is, of course, the tax rate that you also selected during that selection process, but you can always change that in here as well. These next 2 lines are very important. So when it comes to QuickBooks, they do not record fees or tips in the way that we record them. So when we record them in Your Able, they appear down with the subtotal and the total. In QuickBooks, how they handle it is they add non-taxable line items to the invoice that equate to the value of the fees or the tips in Your Able. So what this is going to be pulling in here is basically a list of all of your products and services over in QuickBooks that you can select from to represent fees or tips over in QuickBooks. So basically, anytime you apply a fee to a job in Your Able, then when it sends over to QuickBooks, it's going to find whatever product or service that you select out of here, and it's going to apply that. I don't know why gardening is in here. It's going to apply that as the fee line item. So it's going to add this, in this example, gardening service into the invoice, and it's going to make the value of that line item the value of the fee that you added in Your Able. This is so then it doesn't apply any kind of credit to the customer because they're technically overpaying based on the actual line items that are in the job. Same thing with tips. If a tip is taken in Your Able, so then that doesn't apply as a credit over in QuickBooks as if the customer accidentally overpaid, then you would need to find, and I think in this case, yep, I do actually have a tip line item that would be added in. So ideally you want it to represent what it actually is. So I would definitely, if you don't have a fees or tips line item over in QuickBooks, I would go over there and create those in your products and services list. So you can actually select them here. So then you actually know what that is when it populates in one of your invoices over in QuickBooks. This next preference here is mainly for accountants. If they have a certain account that they want all of the payments to channel into, if you don't select anything here, then it will just automatically go into undeposited funds. If you're ever having any issues with this integration, we do have this sort of fail-safe here to clear all of the QuickBooks Online references from your customers and products and services. So then you could potentially re-add them in if you want to reorganize things or anything like that. But definitely reach out to us before you do something like that. Now, if you are in a situation in which you already had products and services or customers entered into Your Able and you connected to QuickBooks after that, then there is a few other steps that you want to pay attention to, specifically within products and services. So you'll notice in here, I'll go ahead and click into one of my services. When you go to edit one of your services after connecting to QuickBooks, you're going to see this new little QuickBooks section down at the bottom. It says fetching income accounts. So one of the required fields from QuickBooks is to attach each of your services or products to its appropriate income account. In a lot of cases, it's going to be something like billable expense income or sales, but you can see there's a bunch of different things in here, and this is something that's totally up to you in terms of what you select. Maybe speak with an accountant if you're unsure. And of course, moving forward, this will be a required field within your ABLE anytime you go to create new products or services in here. Once you select a QuickBooks income account, then you'll be able to jump over to metadata, and you'll be able to click this Add to QBO button, and this is going to generate a QuickBooks ID once that successfully sends over to QuickBooks. So you can see the ID has been produced over here. So that means that this service now successfully was added over to QuickBooks. Again, this is only for if you already had services added into your ABLE prior to connecting to QuickBooks. Of course, if I create any new products or services in your ABLE now that I'm already connected to QuickBooks, they will automatically send over without me having to do what I just did. But again, there is a lot of nuance with this, so please reach out, set up a Q&A with us so we can go through your specific situation, because we certainly want to make sure that you connect to QuickBooks properly so then the integration can function properly moving forward. If you guys have any questions on any of this, please feel free to reach out anytime.